We'd like to write two useful functions over lists, which are normally called take and drop, and we'd like them to operate like this. If I call take two elements from 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, I'd like that to return the list just containing the first two elements of that list. And if I call drop 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, I'd like it to return everything but the first two elements of the list. So you can see that these are in some way complementary, because if we write take x elements from L and append that to drop x elements from L, then that's the same thing as just L. Now, what's interesting about these functions is that they don't have a correct answer for every input. If we're asked to take 7 elements from this list, we would expect that to be some sort of error or some sort of failure. And similarly, if we're asked to drop 7 elements from a list only containing 5 elements, well, that's an error too, because we were asked to drop more than we could. So what will be the types of these two functions? Well, take is going to take an integer and a list and give you back another list. So we put in some arrows and we say, well, the first thing that comes in is an integer, and the second thing is going to be an alpha list, and you get the same kind of list out. And in fact, we can see that that's also the same type for drop. So now to define these, well, they're fairly simple to write out, but we have to decide what happens in the case of a failure. So we can write drop out, let rec drop, I'll call it n and l, n the number of things we want to drop, l the list. Well, if n equals 0, then we just want to return the list. We've been asked to drop 0 elements from a list, we return the same list. Otherwise, well, we better look at L and take it apart. So if it has a head and a tail, well, then we want to throw away the head h and now drop n-1 items from the tail. So we've got one fewer item to drop, and we're dropping that from the tail instead of the whole list. So in fact, of course, we can put an underscore here too, because we don't use h on the right hand side. Now, if it doesn't consist of a head and a tail, it's the empty list, and we don't know how to drop something from the empty list. In fact, we've said you shouldn't be able to. Now, at this stage in our learning, we don't know how to deal with those errors. So at the moment, we're just going to leave that case out. And if you type this into OCaml, it will tell you, it will warn you when you type it in, that you haven't matched against the empty list. And that can cause an error when you actually try and call the function. The function take is somewhat similar. Again, we'll call them n and l. Well, here, if n equals 0, we've been asked to take no elements from the list. So the answer is the empty list. Otherwise, again, let's take the list apart. Well, a head and tail, and we do want H, and then we want to take n-1 elements from T. So let's just look at a quick example. We'll use take as an example here. Use the example from above. Take two things from 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Well, n is not 0, so we pull it apart into a head and tail, and we're returning the head, which is 2, const on to take, well, 2 minus 1, which is 1, of the tail, which is 4, 6, 8, 10. So now it's 2 cons, well, we're asked to take one element, so again it's not 0, and again we match, so we get 4, and we want to take now 1 minus 1, which is 0 elements from 6, 8, 10. Well, that is now the base case, so we've got 2 cons 4, cons take 0 is the empty list, which is the same as the list just containing 2 and 4, which indeed is the correct answer. So there are two useful functions on lists.